Alright, so we are on our way to meet with and talk to the first of the 4 special guest coaches for the camp. It's going to be Coach Clint Feroz. So he's got a lot of cool things to say, interesting things to talk about, and he's going to tell you what he plans on bringing to the camp. So here we go. Alright, so we're here with Coach Clint Feroz. Ask him a couple of questions. Here's the first one. So Clint, when I first posted information about this camp, you're the first person to message me about helping out. What made you want to help out?
It just sounded like a cool opportunity. My career was in Delaware, but I am a native of Cecil County. I'm a product of the Rising Sun Junior Wrestling program. I'm definitely a product of the late Andy Brown. He was the one that got me inspired for wrestling, and it just seemed like the county needed help, and how could I not help it? So. I think there's a lot of talent. I've been hearing people say it's a lack of talent. I don't believe that. I believe that there's a lot of talent in this county, and I think it has a lot of potential to raise eyebrows.
You started wrestling at a young age. So what does wrestling do for kids at a young age?
Wrestling definitely introduces kids to some life realities at a really young age. I think it helps with teaching us how to cope with when we don't get our way. But also it teaches us resilience. Like, I think one of the most important things that makes good wrestlers is their way of being resilient. And I just remember I had a lot of fun when I was wrestling at a young age. It's a great sport with a lot of great people, especially in this county. I grew up with some great role models. And I recommend this whenever I have a parent ask me about what sport they should do. I always recommend wrestling. The pros way outweigh the cons, and I just think it's a great way to just for your kid to get into something. And the nicest thing about it is you don't have to be the biggest kid. You don't have to run the fastest. You don't have to throw the farthest. All you got to do is be willing to work hard, and you can succeed in this sport.
What's one thing you wish you knew about or did more of in the off-season before your wrestling season started?
Definitely one thing that I wish I would have focused on more is really just not putting so much pressure on myself, not having to, really just trying to more stay in the moment. I felt like my mind was always in the future, and really for me, and it's always the advice I give to my guys that I coach, is just stay in the present moment. Work on what you need to work on, be realistic with yourself, and just make a goal sheet and just work towards it. I see it with a lot of wrestlers. They put a lot of pressure on themselves. They feel they have to do this, they have to do that, and you see the best wrestlers succeeding today. When you hear them talk, they're not talking like it's a have to win mentality. They talk with a lot of humility. They're always attributing it to hard work. So, I just really, if there's one thing I could wish I could go back on myself, it's just, staying in that present moment, just taking it day by day, working on things, and just trying to perfect my game.
All right, so you're coaching now, and you coached the last season at Caravelle High, where you actually wrestled and competed at a lot. What would you say is different now being a coach as opposed to being a wrestler?
Coaching is a very unique experience that I definitely feel privileged to have. I definitely feel a lot more gratitude towards my coaches. I get to coach alongside a lot of the coaches that coached me. It can be frustrating, but it's also very rewarding, especially just to see the memories I got from wrestling. They still stick with me today. I imagine they're going to stick with me for the rest of my life. And just getting the opportunity to stand alongside, a bunch of kids that are making memories, succeeding. It's probably my favorite thing to watch in the sport of wrestling is to watch a kid who works extremely hard and just getting to see that when that hard work pays off. It's probably the greatest thing about wrestling is just if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to go to the places that people aren't willing to go to, it really does pay off.
And what would you tell parents who are maybe on the fence about letting their kid join wrestling?
Really, I've said it to parents. I've never seen a kid join wrestling and their life get worse. I've never seen a kid not, I don't know what the word would be. I'd never seen a kid not succeed after wrestling. I'm still in contact with a lot of guys, retired wrestlers just like me, and a lot of them are succeeding in life. Wrestling just gave us such a good base to go out into the real world, and it really is a sport like no other, because you get such a good bond with the guys you train with and the guys that coach you. And if you're on the fence about it, I completely understand it from the outside looking in. There's a lot of slams. There's a lot of cutthroatness to it, but it's very rewarding, especially if it's something that your kid really wants to do. And I've never seen a kid not do. I've never seen a kid get worse from not joining wrestling.
All right, Clint. So, any parting words you want to share?
I'm excited to coach this camp. I feel like it's a great opportunity. One thing that Cecil County is definitely in an abundance of is great, passionate coaches, and a lot of them are going to be at this clinic. I get to coach alongside some of the guys that I trained with, guys that had coached me early on, and it's an opportunity that shouldn't be missed. If you're one of these guys who's in the off season that's looking for something to do, just do it. It's hard work. It will be hard work. When we come into these practices, we will be working hard. We will be pushing ourselves to the limit. But it'll pay off. It'll especially pay off next March.
Thank Coach Clint here, helping out. And we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good, guys. I'll catch you then.
All right, so we're getting ready to meet up with Coach Jake, who's one of our special guest coaches. He's going to tell you a little bit about what he plans to do in the camp, plans to teach, and his experiences wrestling at a young age, and maybe even wrestling for Cecil County. So, let's get to it. All right, so Jake, you graduated and wrestled at Bow Manor High School. So what does it mean for you to be featured as a special guest coach for this camp?
It means a lot just to come back after being away for a couple of years in Maryland, just getting back into the community, because the wrestling in the county's kind of fallen off a little bit since we've been gone. That's not just me, but everyone that kind of grew up in that little era where we had a good group of kids, whether it was Tim or my brothers, Anthony. So just able to come back, kind of help grow that community that we used to have.
So what was it like hearing that no wrestler from Cecil County placed at the state tournament this year?
It was kind of painful because I felt like we were moving forward, going in the right direction. We had a couple kids, go on to the college level, make a little career for themselves. So it was eye-opening to see that step back and just want to help out, get it back to where it used to be.
So you recently graduated from college and started helping out, training and coaching right away. Is that something that you always wanted to get into, and why?
So getting into coaching right after school was something I knew I was going to do, just because I've been in the sport for so long. There was no other option. I knew I wanted to be a part of it, and I'm going to stay a part of it until I can't. So I also had the background in kinesiology, so I never had that strength and conditioning side of things. It's something I'm looking to bring into what I'm doing now, helping everyone out in the community as far as that goes.
What was it like in a Division I college wrestling practice room every day?
It's a really fun experience because all your partners are pretty tough. There's no easy days, and it's a lot more common to see cauliflower ear, have to go get that drained all the time. But it was definitely fun getting that grind in every day, getting better.
You started wrestling at a young age. What has the sport of wrestling done for you and your growth as an adult now?
It's definitely developed a lot of character. It has taught me how much it means to work hard at everything you do, because how you do anything is going to be how you do everything in the workplace. So sometimes it's tough for me to understand why people aren't working as hard as me, because growing up I only saw all the hard workers in the room. So now it's collecting most valuable employee month after month if that's the case.
So what would you say to parents who are on the fence about letting their kids join a wrestling team?
Don't let all the weight cutting, all the hard coaching you see on these videos kind of distract you from the main goal of wrestling. It's going to turn your son, your daughter into a man, a woman. It develops all that character I was talking about as far as that hard work, that drive, as far as developing that internal motivation. It helps you with goal setting. It just helps develop you as a whole person.
So Jake, any final parting words you'd like to share with us?
I got a pretty sneaky ankle pick series I definitely want to be able to show, and I think we're going to blow some minds when we show the different type of pressure I think I have.
All right. I want to thank Coach Jake here, helping me out. We'll see you guys July 22nd.
See you then.
All right, see ya. All right, so we're here with Coach Kevin Green from Triple Threat Combat Sports in Newark, Delaware. Kevin, give us a little bit of your background with wrestling.
So I started wrestling when I was 5 or 6. I did it in a midget program, and then most through high school, and then I think it was my sophomore, junior year I stopped and focused on football. But that's kind of when I started getting into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and judo, which is also a mat sport. So that's kind of my background. When I was fighting MMA, I used to train with some guys that were Olympic wrestlers. Some of them were on the alternate team. So I've had a lot of experience with mat sports in general.
All right, so you run a successful mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym in Delaware. So what are your thoughts on people coming in with no experience in those sports but coming in with experience in wrestling?
So typically wrestlers, when they first come into my school, you already know they know how to work hard. They understand the mat itself and weight distribution, and they have good hips. And initially, I'll be honest, wrestlers have a hard time, usually the first few months, because they rely on the wrestling, and then they have a tendency when they're in a bad situation, instead of moving into the jiu-jitsu technique, they go back to the wrestling. But once they break that cycle and they learn the difference between jiu-jitsu and wrestling and when and how to apply their wrestling for jiu-jitsu, they typically progress faster than the average guy off the street.
So you are one of 4 special guest coaches. What do you bring differently than the other coaches?
I would say my focus is more adapting jiu-jitsu and judo into the sport of wrestling. So some of the techniques that we use for our art or our sport have to be tweaked a little bit to apply to a wrestling match, but I think it'll be brand new techniques that none of these guys have seen before or have used before. And if they get them down, I think the same holds true to their opponents on the mat. If they learn how to leverage some of these moves, their competition, they're probably not going to have an answer for that, because it's not really the standard collegiate type wrestling techniques that you would normally see, but they will be adapted to be legal, so that they can use them in the future.
And what would you tell any parent who might be on the fence about letting their young child start out in wrestling or another mat sport?
I think from the outside looking in, if you don't really understand the sport, it can look a little intimidating. But I will say, if you get in the right program with the right coaches, a mat sport is good for younger kids, not just from an athletic perspective, but from the perspective of learning things about yourself and developing as a person. Unlike team sports, mat sports are individual. You practice as a team, you sweat as a team, and then when you get out there, you're on your own. and that can be intimidating. But it also teaches you how to be independent. It teaches you how to, in that moment when you do stand alone on the mat, to still be able to pull from and rely on your team. It also, I think it looks a little more intimidating than it is in the regard of there's no striking involved. If you're with the right team and the right coaches, it's a safe sport. It just doesn't appear that way to outsiders, but it's not like, and I played football, don't get me wrong, but there's no contact, there's no head trauma. There are injuries just like any other sport, but again, if you're with the right team and the right coaches, it can be very rewarding for both you and your child.
Anything else you want to add and tell the viewers watching this video?
I'm excited to be part of this. I really think it's a good idea, and it's kind of unique to bring in a judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy into a wrestling camp. I think because the camp is really focused on techniques and not conditioning, I feel like I'm going to get a lot of time to show these guys some really neat stuff that they can pull from other arts and sports and apply it to wrestling. I also, for me, it's important to be able to expose these kids to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and judo, so that, you know, once they graduate high school, if they don't go on to wrestle in college or after college, that they know that their ability to still participate in mat sports can continue through a Jiu-Jitsu or judo